Hey guys, as part of my effort to move this channel forward as well as provide more content outside of the world of racing and Zwifting, I wanted to provide Scared the crap out. Hey everyone and welcome. So this is going to be part of a new series that I'm going to be working on, looking to provide about probably once or twice a month some progress, not only progress on my nutrition, but also some of the methods that I'm using to track the things that I'm tracking, the different metrics, whether it's my respiration rate, my calorie uptake, not only carbohydrates, but fats, and my VO2, my blood glucose, ketones, things that ultimately I use in combination to help me understand where my efficiencies are at, and most importantly, where my deficiencies are at. And so today we're going to go through this product that I purchased myself. It's called the Calibre Biometrics. I have it here by my side. Right now it's kind of cooling down. So it's basically a face mask that you wear while you're working out. And what it's intended to do is capture your breath. So it captures how much oxygen you pull in or how much air you breathe in and how much carbon dioxide comes out. And then in the background, it does some calculations to not only identify your VO2, your VCO2. It doesn't do VO2 max, but it does do peak VO2. So you can use that to calculate your VO2 max. And then it also calculates your metabolism, your fat burn rate, your carb burn rate, or your glucose burn rate. It also calculates your calories, I believe, per minute, calories in total. So it gives you a good picture of what's going on in your body while you're working out. So today I'm going to go through a 30-minute workout that it has for fat oxidation to really identify where that's at. And, at what point does my body start to really convert over from burning fats to burning carbohydrates or burning glucose? And so I'll take you guys through that. I have a screen recording of that video, essentially of the app itself, the Calibre app, as well as a recorded session of my Zwift ride, my Zwift workout. So that way you can see in near real time what my body is doing at the moment. Not only will you see my heart rate, but you'll also see my body start to transition over from fats going into carbohydrates, and how many calories and carbohydrates I burned in that 30-minute session, as well as how many fat calories I burned in that 30-minute session. So take it away.
So I created this custom workout that follows the guidelines that Calibre recommends, which is 10 minutes at, a certain percentage of my FTP, which is 130 watts, and then 3 minutes at 155, and then another 3 minutes at 180, and then again 3 minutes at 210, at 235, and then 260, I believe. And then about a minute or so of free ride, and then the last 3 minutes of about 130 watts as a cool down. And so the reason why they do that is to ultimately, get the blood flowing, get the body moving. You can see right there, my calories are starting to ramp up pretty quickly. Now, I did start the screen recording a bit late on my app, so I had to essentially sync it up with my effort. So what you're seeing right now is my data in real time with regards to the fat burn and carb burn. Now, it does do an average over the course of, I believe, over a minute. And so it'll, maybe not every minute, but it'll calculate throughout the minute and update accordingly. And so you see right now, my fat burn is slowly starting to come down. I'm about 50-50 right now, fat to carbs. And my heart rate's in the low 100s, 115, 118, kind of slowly. You'll see that slowly and steadily climb up. But my caloric burn rate overall is starting to steady out. I'm averaging about 10 to 11 calories per minute. And right now, just under 100 calories. Now, one of the things that I noticed about the Calibre in comparison to Zwift is almost always Zwift underestimates my caloric expenditure. Now, obviously, Zwift is using my power, my weight, my heart rate, and calculating what my average burn rate would be. While the Calibre Biometrics is literally looking at what my body is burning as I'm exhaling out CO2, O2, and anything else that's coming out. So it's got sensors to pick all that up and really identify what's going on in the body. I'll refer you to their website and their YouTube channel to give a little bit more detailed breakdown as to how it works. But ultimately, as you see, my heart rate slowly starting to come up and my fat burn is slowly starting to come down. My carb burn is slowly starting to ramp up, which means my body is shifting over to utilizing glucose as a source of fuel. Now, this is where I've come to find that my zone two on Zwift is very different than my zone two in real life. And what I mean by that is if you take the typical calculator for zone two is um, your age minus whatever times whatever, whatever the calculation is. But ultimately, doing all the maths, my zone two should be in the 130-ish range for my heart rate and or max heart rate minus your age. That's what it is. And so my max heart rate, I can get into the 190s, mid 190s. If I truly push myself, my max heart rate generally in races is the mid 180s, but I have gone into the mid 190s. So I generally use 190 as an average. I'm 42 years old. And so that gives me a zone two right in the 130-ish range in terms of, or 140, I guess. Yeah, 140, 150 in terms of, zone two, my zone two max. But if you look at where my body's at right now, I'm in the 150s, 154-ish, and I am 100% carb burning right now. My body is just sucking up as much glucose as possible in order to keep my power going. I've completely gone away from burning fat, which generally for me happens in the 130s, 140s with regards to my heart rate. And so, which shows as a lower arena or lower area than what Zwift has my zone two set at. So, this is where products like this, I believe, come in handy because now I can tailor my sessions knowing that, hey, my zone two really needs to, come down a bit when I do zone two. So maybe instead of holding, 170 watts, 180 watts, where I generally average a high zone two to get my heart rate into the 150s, I can bring it down to 130, in that area to see if see if it keeps me in the fat burning arena. So you see that last effort that I did at 260, my caloric expenditure went up, and now it's starting to come back down as my body's starting to rest, my heart rate's coming down. And one thing I will say is that the mask is not um, restricting my breathing at all. It's pretty good about that. They've got a bunch of different holes that are designed to really allow the airflow to go in and out without restriction, without much restriction, rather. So it doesn't clamp to your face. I know, other nutrition podcasters, influencers out there have commented about devices like this and whether or not they're accurate. They do have a clinical trial that does show their accuracy. So if you look at my chart here, you can see that just over 5 minutes is where my peak fat oxidation happens. And right around the 12, 13-minute mark is where my fat oxidation takes its first kind of plateau before declining again. And right around probably 18 minutes or so is where it finally starts to taper out and I'm no longer burning fat, I'm only burning carbohydrates. And for me, that happens right around the 18-minute mark when I'm doing about 200 watts, is where I truly completely turn over. My max fat oxidation was still while I was warming up. So my heart rate was in the, just right around 120, 130. And so that's actually about 120 or so. So that's really where I want to focus on keeping my zone 2 efforts at in order to maximize fat oxidation. So back to me from the past. And so as I wrap up this session, I wanted to show what my, what my numbers look like. So you see my peak BCO2, which again is not my peak VO2 max, or rather my VO2 max, but it's just the peak BCO2 that I hit in this session. If I were to wear it in a sprint session, that would definitely change because I'm going to be oxidizing more uh, carbohydrates and getting myself to the point where I'm going to be out of the carbohydrate range and into the fermenting lactate in order to compensate for the lack of oxygen uptake in those harder sessions. And yes, lactate is a fuel. It's not what is responsible for the muscle burn. Um, Humans don't really produce lactic acid. Lactic acid generally refers to fermentation in dairy products. Humans go straight from essentially burning glucose, and a byproduct of burning glucose is hydrogen ion, and that hydrogen ion then binds to pyruvate, and that pyruvate then turns into lactate, and lactate is what we use to burn in a low oxygen environment. Again, it is a fuel, which does help out immensely. Now the goal is to clear out lactate once you no longer need it, um, which is generally that's where people kind of lean into the idea of that's maybe where the burn comes from, because there is still those free hydrogen ions kind of lingering about. So here you see my total carb burn is about 290 calories. My total fat burn is about 78, almost 79 calories. And my peak caloric burn rate is about 17 and a half, a little over 17 and a half calories per minute, with a burn rate of fat at about 7.5, a little over 7.5 calories per minute. And so I want to pause here real quick, because when you look at what my caloric burn rate was, you start to then realize that if I take in, you know, 500, 1,000 calories of sugar, which is probably going to be a monumental amount um, in terms of whatever product I use, that is then going to not all be utilized. And, some of it or a lot of it could end up being stored as fat later on down the road. It's going to replenish the glycogen stores, sure. Our body can hold quite a bit in terms of glycogen stores, especially muscle glycogen. Does compensate for any liver glycogen that is no longer has room to kind of fill up. So our body, from my understanding, our body will store liver glycogen first, and then put the glycogen into the muscles as needed. Our muscles are able to independently uptake glucose without the need of insulin, which is why we're able to, add carbohydrates to our, fuel mixture, whether it's, fats or not. We're able to add carbohydrates to our fuel mixture and get use of that without feeling a big downstream effect. Now, depending on how much you add, is going to ultimately determine what downstream effects you have. In my case, looking at my numbers, I don't need to add a lot. So my final thoughts here are just take into consideration before you start to look at what's recommended out there with regards to carbohydrates and how much you should take per hour and so on and so forth. Know that your body probably doesn't need as much as you think it does. And if you bring it down depending on your intensity level, you'll probably find that you'll do just as good without as much carbohydrates in your fuel mixture and still be able to keep optimum performance. I hope that helps. Take care.
Hey guys, Miguel from that thing you just watched. If you know where that reference is from, please leave it down in the comments below. One of my favorite channels to review content. So I'll leave it at that. But if you enjoyed this video, please hit the subscribe button, watch videos, playlists, whichever pop up. But thank you so much for joining me on this journey, and I hope to see you next time.